My name is Kristen Dotti. I am a trainer for Catalyst Learning Curricula and a curriculum writer. And today we're going to be working on a topic that is close to my heart. As an IB biology teacher, we are going to be talking about improving IA scores in IB Science Group 4 courses for our students. How do we guide them to provide guidance and direction for them so that their IAs are more complete? And we're going to do that using a tool that I found to be spot on for most of the tasks that my students need to accomplish. That is DataClassroom. And Aaron Reedy is here tonight, who is the founder of DataClassroom. He's also a science teacher. And you can talk with him if you have any questions specifically about DataClassroom. He's here because he's the guy behind the program and can answer all the questions. So if you haven't already logged into DataClassroom, go ahead and log in, because we're going to be using that tonight and do some interactive work so that you can be the student and experience what your students would. We're going to look at some ways to play with data such that our students have a more profound understanding of what has happened with their data as they use collected data, because that's so essential. Their present, their most direct application is just to be able to put these types of things into their IA. But what's more important is that they understand what trends they see, what patterns, and the deeper connection of their data to a broader implications. And so because that's so important, really the way to get there is for your students to be able to manipulate your data and kind of dig through it so that they understand more deeply what's going on. And I found that with programs for graphing and ways to manipulate and analyze data that are automatic, there's that balance between, can my students teach themselves how to use this? Because in a situation with IB, the experimental design is unique. So the student data sets are unique and the problems they're going to face are unique. So the student must have access to navigating whatever interface they're using for data analysis and presentation. However, it also has to be sophisticated, because I need my students to do statistical analysis of their data. So this balance between the two, I'm a great lover of Excel, not a great lover of the Excel graphing, so I found that there were those two things that I was constantly doing. I didn't want to run a whole class on how to use this tool for my students, but of course I found myself doing that. So when I stumbled upon DataClassroom, I was like, this is exactly, and sure enough, Aaron started the company because he's a teacher and he wanted something like this. So of course, this is how it came about. So I want to go ahead and share my screen so I can show you around a little bit. Welcome to anyone who's just popped in the last few minutes. I'm so glad you're here. And we're going to do an interactive workshop tonight. So get ready to use links and put them to play in your DataClassroom. So log in if needed. All right, so I'm going to share this particular slide deck with you so that you've got access to it, and put that into the chat so that we can get started on doing the right thing with, or being in sync with it. Let me pull up the chat really quick. Okay, so this does have some live links in it, this particular slideshow, but you don't have to have those open right now. I'm going to tell you when you need to open those. So just a background, my contact information is on the first slide. If you want to email me or have questions, feel free to use those direct links to me. And Aaron's contact information is on the second slide, again with his email address. So feel free to go back to those now that you have the slide deck. You can do what you need to. Okay, Emma, I will check the access on that. Okay, so let me get the sharing going correctly. I apologize for that delay. All right, sorry about that. You can try it again. That should open access to you. All right, since the focus of our workshop tonight is on improving IA scores. The first thing I want to start with is to take a look at the role that IAs play in our overall scores in the different group 4 subjects. If you're not an IB teacher, we like to use a lot of abbreviations, and the IA stands for the internal assessment, which is one part of the way that our students are going to be assessed for their overall grade. Now, some interesting things went on this year. And so there were some changes in this assessment percentage breakdown that you can see here. You might be familiar with this if you've talked to your IB coordinator or if you've experienced it directly this year, but the International Baccalaureate gave schools permission, or the possibility of getting permission to use their IAs instead of their exam papers, and as they're a part of their weighting. So that did increase the weighting of the IA this year. And there is a possibility that that will be whatever your school did this year will carry over into next year if needed. Okay, so do realize that these percentages that are printed from your guidebooks of your curriculum guidebooks from IB, these percentages are actually may not be in effect for your school this year or next year, depending on what your program, your IB coordinator decided to do. So you can see that the breakdown for biology, chemistry, physics, and for are all 20% of the grade typically, and that's split with the exam paper for percent weight. So this is the part we want to affect of our students' grade. But we also know that our IAs are guided by the teacher, but completely written by the student. And we are really supposed to withdraw ourselves from decision-making in the writing or the choosing of the research question or the collection of data and any sort of analysis. So really, that role you're playing is to help the students before they come to the point where they're working on their IA, and so that they have the skills, or make sure they're working with tools that are going to help them rather than keep them from producing the best possible material that they can. And so for that, let's first look at where our IAs within the 20% weight of the IA, where can we impact their scores with a tool like DataClassroom? And the points that are distributed in the grading rubric for the IA are as such for physics, chemistry, and biology. And so you can see that of the different parts that we can help the students with, we can guide them beforehand so that they have a place to do the things that they have the knowledge to be able to do these things. The most critical part is definitely in the analysis, where we can have a great impact on their scores if the students have good tools to use and they understand how to manipulate their data, how to present it, how to analyze it, and give statistical significance to their conclusions. The conclusions are going to be, however, in this next part, which is to the evaluation. So not all of these points are going to be dedicated to data, to something that DataClassroom might impact. However, a few of the points are likely going to reflect how the student analyzed and spoke about their data, certainly in their confidence overall about what they understand, their depth of understanding. So those are the two most critical areas. And then for ESS, we see something similar. They have a breakdown in a similar manner. These are the critical points that are so dependent on data analysis and presentation. And then we also see some impact here, same thing, a little bit less, but certainly it's more heavily distributed in one area, but up to more points in the other. So the parts of the IA rubric that are in those sections are the analysis sections and the evaluation sections. And so if you take a look at the analysis section, you can see in the writing that so much of what the students are aiming for is dependent on how the data are processed, whether or not the student understands what's being said, whatever trends and stories are being told by their data, and then how did they use evidence-based argumentation when they come to the evaluation? How are they utilizing their data to support arguments and applications? So all of these things are so critical in both the biology, chemistry and physics, but also in ESS about this reference that they're making to the analysis, presentation, and then supporting the conclusions. So we have essentially as certainly 6 points, maybe as many as 10 or 12 points that are going to be wrapped up in data presentation analysis in each of these subject areas. And those are the more direct impacts that we can see if we use a tool like DataClassroom, and the kids really have a facility with something, they are able to make these really clear, crisp presentations of their data. That is helpful. It's helpful for the reader. It's helpful for the student. They also can do statistical analysis, and that's very important, particularly in certain group subject areas. The less direct or less obvious impact comes with this depth issue. And that's where I see those greater level of points. And as a teacher, it's so much more rewarding if my students have taken a really close look at their data, that they didn't do a cursory, let me just make the first graph, always a bar graph, always the mean kind of graph, but they instead dig a little deeper and they start to realize that there's something else going on here. And that takes a little bit of sleuthing. Certainly anybody who's afraid of data or afraid of the tools are going to have a harder time coming off with those indirect impacts, right? So I want to do a couple of things. I want to create a data set. And to do that, I have a clickable link here in pink. And I want you to click that link so that you can, I'm going to stop sharing my screen, but I'm going to show you where you're going. You're going to this heart rate data. So if you could click that link and get to that heart rate data set. Everyone give me a thumbs up if you've got it. It's okay? Okay. Good. Okay, good. All right. So what I want to do is the link, I can put the link in the thing as well. So let me grab that link for you and I'll put it in the chat. There you go. If you need the link from the chat, you can use that just as well. And the link to the slideshow, you might have missed that. So I'm going to put that in this. So that was the spreadsheet link, and that is the slideshow link. Okay, so in this data set, I could give you a data set, which I'm going to do a little bit later, but because I knew that we would have a small enough interactive group, I wanted you to go ahead and make a data set. Import that data set on your own, because of course doing is knowing, right? So let's go ahead and do it so that if you haven't used this tool before, you can go ahead and learn that yourself. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to give each person a student letter. And what I might do is I might have you, if you're okay with it, I'm just going to give you a letter as we go across my screen. So just listen up for your name. Cassie, could you use A, Ronald B, Deepti C?
That's Deepti, yeah, thank you.
Karen D, Lisa E, M. McQueen F, Sarah G, Ramelia G, H, Samantha I, Emma J, Francis K, Sandrine K L, Abrel M, Doran N, and Sarah May. Woman in. We're going to put in. I'm going to actually have you hold off, Sarah, because we're now to N. We have the total that we can use. Okay, so in this data set, I have student A, B, C through N. I have those students listed with trial numbers 1 through 5 before relaxation, and trials 1 through 5 after relaxation. And so what we're going to do is we're just going to take our heart rate, and I'm just going to have you take it for 15 seconds and multiply it up so that we can take 5 quick data points. Is everybody okay with that? Okay. So to do that, I'm going to give you a 15-second time interval. And when the timer's up, you can I'll tell you start and stop. Then you can multiply it by 4 and put it in for student A, trial 1, and then student A, trial 2, and so on. So find your little places on your data sheet. If you have any questions, you can put them in the chat. Okay, so to find your heart rate, you can either go here with 2 fingers, first 2 fingers, or you can take your first 2 fingers and go down your wrist, right on the thumb side of your wrist. There's a little groove. If you follow your thumb and fall into that groove underneath your bone, you'll feel your pulse. If everybody's got a pulse, then we're good to go. If you don't, and you have a letter, make it up. Okay, on your mark, and count to yourself or have your mute on, okay? On your mark, get set, go. Stop. All right, write that number down, get ready, and we're gonna go again. On your mark, find your pulse. Get set, go. Stop. Don't forget to multiply by 4, because that's only 15 seconds. And then when you're ready to go again, just put yourself in the visual so I can tell that you're ready. On your mark, get set, begin. Stop. Multiply by 4, throw it into the data set, get ready for the next one. On your mark, get set, begin. Stop. Multiply by 4. And when you're ready, we're going to do last trial in this section. On your mark, get set, begin. Stop. Add that to your data set. And then just to make it fun, so we have a data set we can play with, I want to do 1 minute of relaxation. So everyone but Aaron and I, well, actually I'll leave Aaron to let people in and I'll do it as well. We're going to take 60 seconds, turn off our video, shut our eyes and relax. Leave your audio on so you can hear me because I'm going to say start and stop. And then when you're done, we're going to pop our videos back on and do a quick heart rate check. So if you could, shut your eyes, take a deep breath, and try to relax for 3 deep breaths. Okay, without disturbing yourself too much, we're going to take a heart rate for 15 seconds. Ready, set, begin. Stop. Multiply that by 4. And we're only going to take one trial here just to make sure that I can make a point later about importing a data set that's not complete. So we're going to just work with that last piece of information once it's in our data set. Okay, if you have not finished putting your data in, throw a number in there. Any old number will do. We're just practicing making our data set work. We've got a couple holes in this data set. And so if anyone wants to, Aaron, if you don't mind filling a number in for any of the holes that are in there, that would be great. Okay. So what we're going to do is I want you to practice importing a data set in. That way you have access to that skill using data that you are familiar with. So it always helps for the students to work with something that they understand and have collected themselves. So this being our data set now, we have collected just our preliminary trials. So that would be our prior to relaxation trials. Hopefully you're a little stressed. I was trying to push you guys a little bit, be fast about it to give you a little bit of a stressor. And now we're going to take that data set and go into DataClassroom. So I've just logged in, and this is the interface for DataClassroom. And I'm going to take my data set into DataClassroom using the import feature from my dashboard. So here I am in the dashboard, and you'll see that there's an import button right here. So I will press on the import button, and it will ask me what type of data I want to bring in. So I could bring in a spreadsheet from my computer, or I could copy and paste a spreadsheet from my computer, or I can start with an empty table, and we could just have created a data set straight into DataClassroom. But because I wanted to make a point, I'm going to import it in from Sheets. I'm going to first copy the URL of this data sheet. So you can do the same thing with me. You can copy the URL for this particular spreadsheet. And then when you go to DataClassroom, you want to choose fetch data from the spreadsheet or from a spreadsheet on Google Drive. And so when I press fetch, I'm able to put that information there as the link. And I will press fetch, and it's going to make sure that I am actually a person who has this account. So I'm going to verify that this is my account, and it's going to say, okay, that's you. We're okay with that. And now that I have done that, it's retrieving data from 141 rows of data, the heart rate data. If I had more than one tab on the bottom here, right now I just have the one tab, but if I had more than one tab like I do in this data set, not in that data set, but in any data set, if I make a duplicate tab, it's going to ask me which tab do you want to bring in, because I can only bring in one tab with that, or I need to have it focus on one tab. So I'm going to go ahead and say done. And it is bringing that in, and it tells me that all of these things have worked correctly. The data have been imported, the column headings have been given, labels and that sort of thing. So if I want more information about what that means, I can learn more here, but otherwise I'm going to say okay, and there's my data set. So I'm going to stop sharing for just a second and let you do that on your own so you have your full screen. If you have any questions, feel free to use your audio or chat. Erin and I can help you.
Yeah, I have a question. When I selected fetch data, it brought me to like an example page with males, females, age, height. I don't know how to get out of that and fetch my own data.
Erin, your mute button is off.
So I think you probably clicked something that was in the same row as that, which was like a resource to help with formatting. So if you have a little window up that's telling you about data formatting help, is that right?
Yeah.
And I think if you close that window, if you X out of that and then you go back to the fetch, and make sure you're hitting the button that says fetch. I could share a screen on the fetch, or I could pull up my own and just make sure I'm seeing the same thing you are.
Well, it closed the whole data classroom, so I guess I have to reopen.
Yeah, if you close the whole website, yeah, you'd have to open. Yeah, so it looks like you must have hit the format tips button, which is immediately to the left of the fetch button. So you want to hit the big blue fetch button and not the format tips.
And April asked about, can we export data sets from DataClassroom?
Yeah, you can. And you'll see when we have a data set open, when you're looking at the table view, there's a little camera icon in the upper right. And if you click on the camera, it will copy the entire data set to your clipboard, and then you can paste it in anywhere else you want, into CSV or Excel or Sheets or wherever you want to export it to.
Okay, great. Does everybody feel like they know how to accomplish the import feature? Okay, so now I'm going to share one more thing about this particular data set, because we didn't complete it, right? So maybe we had a fire drill right in the middle of that, and we have all of this information that is not complete about the after relaxation. So with that particular part of our data set, we can just click onto it and add that information. If we're going to, I'm going to mess up student D's information. We can add that if we just click on any one of those parts. And so you can play with that in your own data set. You can just add data as if you were going to finish the data collection at this point. The other thing that's really critical when you're in this particular interface of the table, notice that we're working with our data, so we're in the table feature rather than the graphing feature, is that we can go to this little menu bar up here and find the add or delete rows feature. It's really going to be important because you're going to have times when you want to add a row, when you want to remove rows, and it lets you navigate. So if I want to add a row, but it'll ask me, where do you want to put that, before or after, I can say after row number 7 or whatever, and it's going to just go ahead and add that. So all of those different ways that we want to manipulate our data once the data are imported, very, very helpful. The other thing I'm going to remind you that I've told Erin is that I'm so used to using Google Suite and it's constantly saving for me. We do have to save as. So go ahead and press your save as button and claim your heart rate data, call it whatever it is. I'm just going to put my initials on it and save it as heart rate data. And that way I know that I can come back to it at any time. So those are the key pieces that I always think of trying to.
I may have just missed that. Where is the save feature? Sorry, Kristen.
It's okay. Save is over here in the upper right corner next to the X.
Oh, I see. I see.
Francis, you might be encountering some sort of administrative permission thing. I can see you're having an ongoing issue with it. So so just know that it might be just that that's going on for you. We can get you some tech help if that's what it is.
Francis, I'm speculating. I think your issue, it's possible that you didn't authenticate with the Google Drive you're actually using. Most of us these days have 4 or 5 different Google Drives, and you need to make sure that you click the right one when it's asking for permission to talk with Google Drive. I'm not positive that's it, but that's my quick guess.
Okay, I think I only have one Google Drive, so I'm just pushing some buttons, so I'll see what I can figure out.
Okay.
And luckily, I mean, the point I was making early on was that this is really user friendly. You cannot mess it up in such a way. You know, Francis is pushing all the buttons. Perfect. That's exactly what our students will be doing, and be watching each other, the questions you guys have, the problems you have, and knowing that it's user friendly. You can't break your data set from this. You can just import it again. Knowing that it's useful for that. That's, to me, is really key, because once my students are feel safe, they'll take the risks of pressing all the buttons and checking it out themselves. So there are a couple of things I want to show you while we're in this particular data set. And that is, there's a flow. There are 2 main buttons at the very top. One is your table and one is your graph. And so those are the 2 different screens that you'll toggle between the most. And when we want to manipulate our data, we are in the table section. And when we want to go ahead and draw a graph, we go to the graph section. So when we're in the table section often, but I can do this also from the graph section, I want to name the type of data I have. So I have treatment before or after relaxation. That's going to be categorical. And so the drop-down menu gives me those choices, and I'm going to choose categorical. My trial number is also going to be categorical, because we all were in the category of our first trial and our second trial, even though it's a number. And then our student is also categorical. That's the student that we're following, but our heart rate data will be numeric. Okay, so now that we have that assigned, we can go on to our graph. However, if I wasn't sure about that, if I needed any help in any of these areas, I could press the data import button and check that everything is right. I could press my prepare button, which is in the same, I've got a little alert here that no descriptions entered, or there's a description that's too long, and so on. So I can look at these alerts, learn more, or ignore it, or just go and fix it. So we have all kinds of information here. They're telling me that that there's an empty cell in my numeric data for my heart rate, that they're just making me wake up to the fact that all of these cells are not complete. So I've got all kinds of ways that I'm being tutored as I go through this preparation flow chart that takes me across before I go to my graph, or I can just skip it and run through it the way I want to run through it and switch over to graph at any point. The other preparation tool that's here is a graphing wizard. So you can walk through a little tutorial as you go about choosing the right graph, and taking this particular route. Walks you through all of the descriptions of steps. So I could be looking at my data in terms of proportions, change over time, variability, comparing groups, or looking for a relationship. And each one of these will lead to some different graphs, and you can click through them and work your way towards the graph that describes your data in the way that makes sense to you. So it'll ask you one question after another. You can go back. You can choose from drop-down menus based on your data. And so don't be afraid to fool around with any of these features as you go through, and it will help you set up your graph the first time you're using it. What you'll see with the students is if they don't get what the graph they want, they don't function, it doesn't function, then they just start over and do it again and make better choices. So we were looking at the variable that specifies the groups, and we're going to use the treatment. The variable will be heart rate in this case. So it's going to give us a little preview of the types of graphs we can choose between. And so I can just select based on visuals as well as whatever it's asking me. And then when we get to the end, if I want to do it myself, I can click this, or it will just show me how to set this up by pressing through the graph wizard, which is switch to graph view, which is this button here. Clear the existing graph. There's no graph, so we're good to go. Select the type of graph. We want to use a scatter plot or a histogram or a pie graph, so it's going to have us choose that. and then add variables to our graph. So this is pulling down these different categories here, which I could just press show if I want to do it by hand, or I could have this wizard help me, and then place the variables on the axes. These are all of our data points, and then do any connecting measurements. So we're finished prepping there with the wizard. So you can see we've got this graph that shows us this comparison between prior to relaxation and after relaxation. And notice that it was telling me that this is too long of a name, and sure enough, it's falling off of my graph. And so it's got a few things of warnings, and it's distributing the, it shows the distribution of the heart rate data between these the y-axis, and the students can play around with all different parts of this graph. If I don't want, if I want this axis to go down to 0, then I can use the appearance tab and change that to go into these issues and change my axis range to include 0 or whatever I feel is important. The key thing for IB is that the descriptive statistics are readily available. So I can use the mean, and the standard deviation is what's shown here on my graph. You can see the descriptive statistics shows the standard deviation. I can show that on the graph so that the standard deviation calculation based on the mean is shown here with the data chart, or I can show the values here and clip this as a screenshot from my copy. So I can copy this to the clipboard and paste it into an IA. I can add titles, things that are required for a particular, all the particular attributes are going to be here. So this is breath holding. Oh no, it's heart rate. And so we can take a shot of that, and I'm going to show you this transfer because it's so critical for my students to be able to copy whatever it is they make and take it to their IA. I'm going to switch over and show you kind of a little mock IA. If the student has their mock IA and they're prepping it, and they might have put it in some sort of hand graph instead, they're going to paste it here, and now they can get rid of that little hand graph, and instead they've got their information right into their IA. Likewise, I can take the statistical analysis, the descriptive statistics, and make a copy of it and throw it into the IA so that it's a little bit more refined. And I mentioned, this is one thing just to make it look pretty and crisp and lovely. All of that's possible. You have so many different features here that you can utilize that the students are required to do on their own. So instead of standard deviation, I'm going to have my students do a 95% confidence interval, and that's what's shown instead. So you can notice that the jump from standard deviation to the 95% confidence interval is shown here. My students might choose to get rid of the dots, so they can do all kinds of different manipulations of color and texture and dot size and that sort of thing, which I'll give you guys the chance to do that on your own with the appearance if you want. But the change of their XY axes are very quick. If I decide that I'm going to put some other, fool around with some other aspects of this, I might change the features by switching things around on my choice menu. So actually, I'm going to get rid of this. I don't want to see this right now. So I'm going to change the X value to be trial number. I can go between treatments. I can do things that would be very tedious for a student to do. If they decide to switch things around, then they're going to find that to draw a hand graph of each type and decide that's a terrible decision. That graph is not the right graph. Those are things that they find out and might want to switch around instead, so that they can see. For instance, maybe they just want to look at whether or not, I'll pull the dots back up here, whether or not the trial number, people were, getting higher or lower numbers based on their trial number. So there's all kinds of things they can find out just by playing with the data and having the facility to do one graph after another of different styles and different techniques. So I want you guys to have that chance, to have a chance to manipulate a data set. And and see if you can learn a thing or two about that. So in our next little interactive aspect, what I want to do is I want you to use the data set that use a different data set. And sorry about that. I'm clicking on there. I'm clicking back into my slides and realizing. So I want you to use this data set and hang on just a second. Use this data set that's on slide number 11. Click on the link and import it. It's a data set on CO2 fermentation. So, you know, the use of sugars, different kinds of sugars on fermentation rates. So yeast fermentation with different types of sugars. So it's a little data set, and you can manipulate the data in any way that you want. I'm going to put you in breakout rooms, and if one person is able to manipulate that the data, what you're going to do is then paste those graphs onto a slide, and so you'll see that the slides have a space for you to write to make a copy in DataClassroom and paste it right onto your slide. And I'm going to have you just take whichever breakout room number you have and use that slide number. Is everybody clear on that? The instructions are on slide 11. So I'm going to have you go ahead into your breakout rooms, read the instructions on slide 11, and then find the appropriate slide with your group mates and make 3 different graphs to put on that slide. Yes, Aaron.
Kristen, and just so we're all on the same page, the data set we're all working with is the one that's click this link on slide 11.
That is correct.
And that is the heart rate data set that we just made together, correct?
Oh, gosh, that's not right. Sorry.
Okay.
Apologize. I want that to be, let me change it right now. I'm sorry. It's because I have instructions somewhere else, and I'm not sure what. Give me just a second. I have the instructions. On different
this
slides.
is how everyone's teaching year has gone. You're
This
fine.
is exactly it. I think I deleted the slide that has the instructions on it. That's what I think happened. Okay, so I'm going to throw a slide in here really quick that has the instructions. Instead, I want you to use the instructions on slide. Thanks for clarifying that, because I was oblivious to it. I don't know where that slide went, but it's somewhere in the ether. All right, so created. So I want you to import this data set and create 3 graphs and make the graphs different graphs. Each graph should tell a story, and if preferably a different part of the story of this particular data set. And then paste those 3 graphs on the breakout room slide that's for your breakout room. Okay, so those are your instructions. Now they're hopefully clickable on slide number 12. Any other questions before you go to breakout rooms? You have all of about 5 or 6 minutes, not a huge amount of time, but I will give you a 60-second warning. So go to it. I'll see you in a few minutes. Call on us if you need help. I think Samantha's supposed to be in your group, but she hasn't moved over yet. So I don't know if she's having connection problems.
Okay.
Are you guys okay on your own?
I think so.
Okay. Call me if you need me, okay? Cheryl, if you can hear me, everyone's in breakout rooms right now.
And and then yeah, we'll see what
I thought it said reported. I thought, uh-oh, they're reporting us.
It just follows me. The recording follows me, which I haven't done before. So it's freaking me out.
That's hysterical. I'm
That's
like,
funny.
How are you guys doing? Are you okay?
Oh, we're just talking it through.
Okay, good, good. Great. As long as you're moving forward, you don't need me.
Well, I just have one question.
Sure.
So it's interesting because, like, you know, you've got the two numerical values, and so we were like, well, we'll just throw them and call them numerical. But I don't really know. I'm assuming it's just the amount of time it sat there before CO2 was measured. Is that?
Yeah. So it could be. Actually, you know what that is that it's measurements at time 0, measurements at time 2, and so it's really kind of an interval rather than really about the minutes, right?
Okay.
It's saying, okay, early in the experiment, later still, and then at the end of the experiment. It's that kind of stuff. So think of that as categorical.
Okay. That's what we were.
Even though it's numeric, that's why I wanted you to have like some tricky stuff. Because you're gonna do it, right? They're gonna do everything where you're like, I thought I knew what I was doing.
Yeah. No, it's fine.
Okay, I'm gonna go check on these guys who asked for help.
Hello. The instructions are to paste our graphs into the slideshow, but it's view only.
Oh.
I don't know if you want us to paste or not.
Thank you for telling me that, because I was like, you know, nobody's pasting anything. Well, that's why. All right, got it. I'm just switching it over right now. Done. Try it again.
So it works now.
Good. Okay. I'll do a broadcast message. Thank you for letting me know.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for fixing it.
Sure. How are you guys doing?
I'm unable to paste it in.
Because I just released it. So let me go ahead and do a little broadcast to let people know.
Is it because it's set up as view only?
Yeah, it's view only. And Emma just reminded me that from the other room. So it should be, you should have access now. If you refresh it, you might need to refresh it. Are you guys navigating okay?
Thank you.
Mhm. Any questions? You guys okay? Okay.
So
How are you guys doing?
Um,
We're doing
so-
all right. I mean, I, I, I like this graph wizard.
Yeah, it's pretty helpful, huh? Gives you some really fun choices.
So I didn't use a graph wizard. I just tried to do it by myself by hand.
Yeah, that's okay too.
I was just playing around with it. I probably should have used the wizard.
It's okay.
But I'm gonna paste like what I have. I had copied it. I don't know why I can't. Oh, because it says that the PowerPoint is view only.
Yeah, so if you refresh, I opened the sharing privileges so you can edit now. So you can see people are putting graphs on them now.
Okay. All right. So I just pasted my graph on there. That
Yeah,
I made I don't know why I have two controls though.
because there's a positive and a negative. So when you're doing the yeast experiment, you have to make sure your yeast are not producing carbon dioxide. You want to know how much they're producing without sugar in the tube. So that's your positive control, that my yeast are in there and what do they make when there's no sugar. And then the negative control is without yeast.
So
Sugar.
is there, I'm sorry.
It's good.
Is there a way for me to change the word? Or all I see is there's a plus and a minus there. Okay, never mind.
And you can even eliminate that particular column. That's kind of a little more sophisticated, but I can show that to you if you want.
Okay. Well, I have at least one graph up there.
That's it. If you guys throw a couple on there, we're gonna run out of time anyways.
With no title. I'm sorry.
Are we break room 5?
You are break room. Let me see.
Yeah, I think we're 5.
Okay.
I would say like this is like more than half the battle of like getting the students to make a graph. I was doing it last year on Google Sheets and it just like, okay, let's go through this again.
Yeah.
Highlight the first column, second. Google Sheets doesn't make it really easy to put together a graph. You have to know some tricks to like turn the X and Y's around, but I like this program.
Yeah, I found it really useful. So love it for that reason. And we're not supposed to be giving our students much guidance, but this is something where I feel totally comfortable that they're going to figure it out on their own. They're going to talk to each other. They'll share with each other.
Okay. And they would like in their IA, they would just note in their text that they use the data set program.
Yeah.
They don't have to, I'm concerned about like with the calculations, do they have to give an example of how they got to like the standard deviation and things like that?
They should. So they can do one sample calculation and then put their table up and that's fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And you can, they can help each other to do the sample one if they need to, but you can't help them.
Right.
Okay, I'll see you in the main room in just a minute.
All right.
As you change the variables and make different graphs, is there a way to go back to the previous graphs that you've made?
That's a good question. I'm going to ask it to Aaron. I think you save them as separate files, but let me just verify. Everyone has their mute on, just so you know, because we came back to the main room. But Aaron, the question is, if you have a graph and you like it, you want to save it, but you need to go play with 4 or 5 more graphs. How do you save that one graph and so that you can kind of have a bunch to choose from and display?
Yeah, currently the best way is to grab it and drop it into a doc. And there's also the attachments feature. So you can have a doc that lives permanently as part of your data set. And so it can, you know how there's the table tab, the graph tab, and then you can have an attachment of a doc. So you can just continually go back to that and drop it into that. Very soon we will be adding the ability to just save several graphs, but for right now you want to take it and drop it into a document you're working on.
So a couple more
Thank you.
for in terms of improving IA scores. One of the key features of their data analysis is to work with descriptive statistics and possibly do hypothesis testing. And I just want to mention that you have all of those features in DataClassroom that will help the students confirm or go ahead and do the calculations. And so if they're in DataClassroom and they want to do something more advanced with their statistical analysis, the students can use the other features, and you can turn those on and off as a teacher of what features, what buttons they have available to them by showing or hiding the controls. So I got to that through this little menu bar on the left side. I'm able to go to show and hide controls, and I can allow them to see just the standard controls, or I can give them more buttons so they can do something like a more sophisticated features that they might want to use. Okay, so if you want to do linear regression, that's possible. They can do a t-test, they can do chi-squared test, they can do an ANOVA, they can do all of these different things and export those on the graph or just as a value table. So I want you to know that you've got those features that are all clickable. You know, there's a little bit of learning as a teacher for to be teaching it, but it's very much the kind of thing that if I open it, my students are going to learn it before I do, or before I even tell them. Set them to a task, have them do something like I just had you do, and they're going to be teaching themselves as they go. So I have a couple of things before we finish. We will be doing more workshops on DataClassroom, one each month. So please look at our calendar. You can look on the calendar of the website where you went for Catalyst Learning Curricula, or you can look at to DataClassroom, either one of us. I also have a statistics for teaching IB Sciences that starts on Thursday as a series course to teach you statistics so that you can go to DataClassroom and say, these are the most appropriate things I want to guide my students through. So know that we have, you have access to us through our slides. I want to leave the rest of the time for questions and let people stay on as long as they want, but I also know that we're about to hit our time. So thank you for coming if you have to go. And if you have any questions, go for it. And if you want to stay and just listen to other people's questions, I'd love to hear them.
Will we be able to receive a recording of the video?
Yes.
Of the meeting?
Yes, the meeting is recorded and it'll be distributed in a day or two. Aaron and I will post a link to it and it'll have all the slides. A lot of times we toggle the slides a little bit. So we'll add some links to the slides so you have a little bit more to go from. And you already have access to the slides as well.
Excellent, thank you.
Great. Thank you, you guys, for those of you who are leaving. Anybody else have a question?
So I was just wondering if you could go through showing how to label the data.
Sure.
Or I mean, I don't know if you want to take it offline, I'm fine.
I'm okay with that.
Yeah, because it was going a little bit too fast and I was like, oh, I want to do it.
It's okay. So, so Deepti, are you talking about labeling the data on top of the, when it's in the chart form, when you're in the table?
Yeah,
form?
so we were trying to, so it's, I'm assuming it's a relationship graph. You're showing as the concentration increases, the carbon dioxide increases.
That's right. Okay, so I'm going to go to that data set that you're talking about, and when you have these different, you were talking about how do we put these names here, right? So in the tube ID, this is repeats, right? These is tube numbers 1 through 8 for the control that has no sugar at time 0. And here's the carbon dioxide that was produced in that situation. If we scroll down, we can see that there's a positive control that would have yeast and water, but no sugar. And then there's a negative control that's water and sugar, but no yeast. And so those are in there. But you can see in the next set, it's the lactose as the sugar. And that is put in tubes with repeat tubes, 8 tubes at these different times. And we're checking it at time 0, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. And so the time, even though it's numeric, can be actually used as numeric, or it can be used as categorical. It could be the time where you're just saying early in the experiment, a little bit later, and at the end. Those would be categories. So you can do categorical, and 0 is a category and 2 is a category, or you can do numeric. And it just depends on which way you want to use the data on your graph. So realize that you have some choice over that. Aaron, did you want to chime in there?
No, I'm sorry. I'm just queuing up questions in the chat. When you're
okay,
done, I'll take a couple of these.
So Deepti, what question did you get to when you were looking at this data set? What was disturbing for you, or what was hard?
No, because it was just saying that I was looking for 2 numeric data to put on the x-axis and y-axis. And I wasn't able to, the concentration, I wasn't able to give it a numeric value. Because like, for example, the concentration, it goes up by, like you have, I don't know, let me just go back and look into it. So it wasn't allowing me to assign a numeric value for that.
Oh,
it's not numeric.
Oh, okay. You're on which one? I'm looking at carbon dioxide concentration.
Yeah, so that was okay. But the first one, the concentration of the sugar.
Like the category, no sugar, disaccharide.
No, the first one on the far left.
Oh, okay. This is actually the tube number.
Oh, I see.
So this isn't the concentration. This is just saying there's 8 tubes for each one.
Oh.
And that's why it's categorical. And because there's letters in these spots, the computer already knows that it's categorical because it has a word instead of a number. It has a word with a number, right? Because it's lactose tube number 1, lactose tube number 5,
Oh, I see.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
When you go to graph it, those tubes will be pooled together to make standard deviation, a mean and a standard deviation for all the trials if you want to pull them together. So when you see lactose right here, that is all my tubes over the whole time period. And
okay, so I sort of misunderstood the whole thing. Because
yeah.
I was thinking it's a concentration of the sugar, but now I realize it's different types of sugars.
And so Deepti, here's the key takeaway, right? When you collect your own data, you understand it. And here I threw this data set at you with this experiment that you haven't done necessarily by yourself. And you would not, my kids would have collected from 8 tubes. They would know, they would change the sugars.
No, this is awesome. So I was just wondering, for IAs, you need to have sample formulas, right? And you have to show a sample of what you did, a sample calculation. And usually I just ask them to take it from Excel, like a screenshot of Excel.
Yeah, you could do that. I mean, one of the things you can do is have your students. So with my students, we walk through the first calculation when we do our trials, our mock IA, so they know how to do the different statistical tests. And then I put them into groups when they do their own IA, and they work their calculations out, and they have someone from a different lab, they're working together so they can see, oh, I think that it's not done that way. I think you do, a t-test this way, so that they can work together and help each other. So they have at least one sample, and then they match it up to make sure it's consistent with the data that they're seeing. That's just the technique I use, because I don't want to be involved when they're doing the IAs, but so we do all that prep beforehand, and then they do a lot of peer work together.
Kristen, we had one question a few minutes ago about where is the clipboard, and I think this is just a terminology question. But we said when you take the camera and you press that button, your image is then on the clipboard. I don't know that you can actually view the clipboard. There may be a way to do that, but the clipboard is just when you copy paste. It's the thing you have copied that hasn't been pasted yet is said to be on the clipboard. Yep.
So you know, it's the kind of thing of insert would be paste at this point, or I can just press on my, I'm doing the commands on my computer,
Mhm.
right? To insert those different visuals.
Yep. And then I don't know if we have just a second, Kristen, if you'd want to throw that up again and just show them with that last graph you had up, if they wanted to run a hypothesis test as their analysis, if you wanted to show how they would go ahead and do that.
Yeah, you know, Aaron, I'm gonna do you have yours up, or you want me to use it on mine?
You can do it on yours because you got the
All
screen
of my
share
stuff.
there,
Okay.
but just over by the appearance, the graph driven test button.
Okay. Yeah, I have to get you guys out of the way. You know, Zoom always puts the faces exactly where you're going. All right. So we're going to do, let's see.
So yeah, you could just close that, and then your button right there.
Okay, so we've got our choice here. It wants us to do a 2A ANOVA. And so it's telling us this, we use this little button right here. It's going to give us a suggestion of where we're going with it based on the data, the way that we've organized the data in the graph. And so we can go ahead and press calculate, and it will show, oops, I'm getting an error message.
Yeah, and that's just because of this data. There's not enough samples to do a 2A ANOVA, but that is the appropriate test. Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to actually take those tubes out. We have
you could just drop type, and then you could do a one-way ANOVA, I think.
Let's get this one out. Actually, which one? I think it's no sugar.
No, I don't know which group was not giving you enough samples, but if you drop the Z variable entirely.
Oh, okay, got it.
And it'll just, then you can run a one-way ANOVA.
Okay, so there's our ANOVA, and the calculation is given like this, so that we have the ability to take a screenshot of that calculation or the results of that t-test. And that's on our, again, it's on our clipboard. So we can switch over and put that into our data, our document. If we want to add that in, we have our statistical analysis now added into the results section of the IA. Is everybody okay with that? So if you change your graph, it's going to change the statistical test that it's suggesting to be in agreement with the way that you've organized your data. And that helps guide the kids a little bit towards different directions. And they realize if I analyze my data this way, or I put them in this other configuration, the question I'm asking or displaying is different. Am I talking about the different types of monosaccharides and disaccharides? Or am I talking about the different types of sugars in general? Or am I talking about a relationship between the amount of carbon dioxide produced and something else, some other factor? So it's going to be using the cues that you choose. Any other questions?
And so would our students, like, do you offer this to our students in terms of a trial period? Would they be able to play around with it? Because it's the end of the school year for us. I have only another week to go. And then they come back in the fall.
Aaron, do you want to talk a little bit about how you do this? How do you get your group of students enrolled so that they're using it and they have access? Aaron is frozen for me.
Yeah.
I'm going to speak for him. So what you have is, if you enroll as a subscription as a teacher, then your students have access. And then that way you have the ability to bring them in and have them create assignments, that sort of thing, that are going to be led by you, so that you've got whenever you're, whatever your subscription is as a teacher, it goes with you and the students that you work with.
Okay, thank you. That was really helpful. I mean, it's so intuitive.
It's
so
very
actually follow along. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel that way myself. And I teach a statistics class for science teachers, right? For IB science teachers. And so teaching them the nuts and bolts of exactly what you're calculating, why you're calculating, what it means, what it doesn't mean, those kinds of things are really, really critical. It's important you know that. But then eventually you have to be able to display it. You've got to be able to navigate it. And what I find is that I need teachers to understand that part of the statistical analysis. And the same way I would teach my students that, I give teachers examples and ways to do that so they can turn around and use the same thing with their kids. But then they also need to be able to say, okay, now I got to make it do what I want it to do. And the more they understand about statistical analysis, the more they understand about data analysis, the more they want control over how they're going to manipulate the graph and the presentation of what they've decided is the right route. So.
And also for your workshops, do we individually register for all? Is there any way to register for all the 8? Because I mean, I've been doing this for a while now, but my stats is really weak, and I really want to understand it really well. So I would like to learn.
Well, come on, we're starting next Thursday. We have a 1 p.m. session on Thursdays, 1 p.m. Eastern time. So that's the time zone with New York's in the United States. You can enroll for all 8, but if you enroll 4 at a time, then every 4th one is free. So you can, do 4 of them together and then get the free one using the coupon. And I'll put the coupon in here for you. That's the coupon code on my website. So if you go looking for the workshops for stats for science, you can use that coupon code and you'll get 2 of them free out of the 8. And that's the better way to go. And Aaron's coming back.
I'll be sure to join.
I would love it. Love to see you there. We get into the real grit. By the end of it, you're an expert.
Okay.
And we marry it, we marry it with from this point, what are you going to do with it, right? Aaron, there was a question. Subscriptions for a teacher,
Sure.
And enrollment for their students. I kind of took it for you, but go ahead and explain just to make sure.
Sure. Yeah. Sorry, I lost my internet connection briefly there. Most subscriptions are purchased by schools for teachers. There's the single teacher license, which covers a teacher and all of the students on that teacher's license, or all of the students on that teacher's roster, and that's $595 for 12 months. And then there's also school site licenses, which have minimum orders, but the per student pricing on that is $6.25 for each student past 500 students. So then it becomes purely per student pricing, and the site license is $31.25 for the whole school. There's also, we employ equity pricing based on free and reduced lunch percentage as well.
Wow.
Was that the question? Did I answer the right question?
My answer was really incomplete.
Okay.
Does anyone have any other questions? We're happy to help you work out anything particular to your own situation. That's totally fine.
No, it's really
Yep.
good.
And I just
Thank you so much.
most welcome. I'm putting my email in the chat. If anyone has any follow-ups, feel free to drop me a note.
Oh, lovely. It's great, Karen. That'll be helpful. And if we're doing stats,
Great.
you're going to find that's a really good combo if you end up joining me for stats. Lisa, did you have a question?
I just wanted to follow up. I'm not sure if I got the pricing correct from Aaron. If it's just one teacher, it's $595 for the school. And then is there a per person, per student?
That's right. It's not per student. It just covers all of your students, no matter whether you have 100 or 150. It doesn't matter. It covers all of them.
Okay, but if you go to a school-wide license, then there's a base price plus a student price. Is that right?
No, well, it's a price for the whole school, and it covers up to 500 students. And then if it's a license larger than 500 students, then it's just $6.25 each additional student. Here, I'll put the pricing, the full pricing link in the website or in the chat as well. But if your school wants a quote, definitely it's worth sending me an email, and then I can get you an official price quote there.
Okay, thanks.
I am dropping that into the chat. There you go.
Any other concerns, ideas?
No, I was just still going back on how to enroll for your workshop. So in our school, we get, we have like we need to do a PO. So
Yeah.
first you have to say what is the workshop you want to do and how much it costs. So when I went to go into your link, I had to register for each one individually. Do you have a spot where I can say that, okay, I need to do all the 8?
You should be able to put all 8 into your shopping cart. Were you not?
Oh, I see. Okay. No,
Okay,
I can go and figure it out.
Put them in one by one into your shopping cart.
And then just,
Yeah, and then you can do that. I'll send you the link so you can see where to do that. But then after you do that, you can, instead of using a credit card, you say generate a quote, and it'll let you it'll send it to you, and that way you have a total to bring to your people. And we use POs all the time, so it's fine. I'm going to give you the link for the place where you would do the statistics one. And if you just go down the list on each one of them and open the more information, it'll give you a chance to take each one of those with the upcoming live workshop.
Oh, I see. Okay.
And then for each one, you just get a ticket. It goes into your shopping cart and you can keep shopping.
Oh, I see. And then you can apply the coupon.
Yes. I've been teaching all day today, and we have a bear that keeps walking through my yard. Usually my dogs are nice and quiet, but this bear is making my dogs bark each time, so I apologize.
It's okay. That was awesome, you guys. Thank you so much for showing this, and I'll be joining hopefully, if it's approved, I'll join your stats class.
I'd love it. That'd be great.
Okay, bye. Thank you.
You guys have a great day. If you're leaving, otherwise, if you have questions, go ahead.
Thank you.
Take care, Lisa.
Welcome.